In 1897, the most magnificent building in Fort Wayne was its brand new courthouse. It was designed in a neoclassical and Renaissance style by Brentwood Tolan, a local architect, and built of high-quality Indiana limestone. The purposes of the courthouse included being the center of county government and providing a symbol of the fair and just practice of law.
Well, actually, Brentwood Tolan, he actually was an architect with his father. It was actually Tolan and Son. This particular building, the courthouse, was built or designed strictly by Brentwood. It was kind of his project.
So this is basically a young man, grew up in Fort Wayne. The only formal training that he had was working for his father, designing other typical Midwestern buildings. So it was quite amazing with the design that he came up with.
And when this building came about, there was actually a contest, and architects submitted their drawings, pretty much probably like they do today, you know, with bids or something. And they narrowed it down to 3, and Brentwood happened to be the one chosen to do this project. And when he was chosen, it was later in his career, and he did want this to be the height of his career. It was kind of his project. He's not a Fort Wayne native. He actually was born in Ohio, but lived in Fort Wayne, his father. So he was you could consider him, he grew up here in Fort Wayne. So in that respect, yes, it wasn't someone from Chicago or St. Louis. He was a local boy.
It was built for a need that didn't exist. There were significantly more courtrooms than was needed. There was more office space than was needed. But it's a phenomenon that has existed over time. Build it and they will come. You tend to build cities that represent what you want to be. Williamsburg, Virginia was very much a city that was not needed at the time, but the people who designed it and built it created the image of the stage that they wanted their future to be played on. And the county commissioners at the turn of the century in Allen County did the same thing. They created a building that mirrored what they thought the future of Fort Wayne would be. And it's interesting because the building served 50 years until it really began to outgrow the space needs. And over time it was filled in. The courtrooms were finished and utilized. The office space was all finished and utilized. There was actually a basement created under the building about halfway through its life. So it was a building that managed to survive all of this change with very little change itself. But it was a building that uniquely reflected the vision that its builders had of the community.
What makes it unique is the lavish, both the shapes themselves and the amount of it. And the exterior of the building is not just something that sort of fakes you out. The interior is every bit as nice as the exterior. That building is just superb. So it's the kind of thing that words from me aren't going to do as much as somebody going down there and just walking around it and through it.
What do you see when you come into the building? What I see, of course, is this incredible piece of architect that is so incredibly designed and decorative. You go, wow. And this is in the Midwest. This might be something I might see out east because the buildings are older. Might be something I might see in Europe. And although this is only 100 years old, in European standards, it's a very young building. But for us here in the United States, it's an old building, and we're very fortunate to have it. But to come in and see how grand it is and how elaborate it is in terms of the decorations, of how your floor patterns, if you look up, you might see that same pattern in the ceiling. Your color palette, it just matches. Your floor is your whole color palette, and that is then mirrored in your ceiling, in your scagliola, just throughout the building. So they took a lot of care, and a lot of thinking was done in coordinating all this together. It's very much apparent in this building.
Nowhere is the evidence of the stone carver's chisel more noticed than on the courthouse. With the intricate and complicated relief carvings, the skill of the stone carver today is almost a lost art.
There are lots of sculptural works on it. There's a whole series of representative low relief carvings along the top. There's several of the major Indians like Tecumseh and Little Turtle. But the building itself has wonderful columns and capitals and little gable end roofs that contain stones on the corners called kneelers that are one of the joys of all joys to carve.
When you look at the courthouse, when you walk around it, inside or outside, you are struck with all of these symbols and emblems and mottos. Everyone needs equal justice, and there's this great person, and there's justice with the scales balancing, and justice is blind, and all those things. And as you look around the building, almost every single bit of the artwork is reminding us of who we are as a democratic country, what our really important values are. Democracy, justice, equality, all of those things. And when you think about the fact that those ideas were so important that they were incorporated into the actual fabric of the building.
The courthouse was a very special place. You were kind of quiet when you were in there. That's where the government was. That's where the courts were. And look at all this gorgeous art. The bas-relief in one courtroom and the oil paintings in another one. It was a place of beauty that we kind of revered.
So you can sit in that square, listen to the fountains splashing in warmer weather, and look up at the facade of the building and know that there is a structure here that is nearly 100 years old, that people invested their pride of place in building. And you can point to various elements and say, this design came from a school in Chicago that was or a school in Paris that was adopted for the Columbian Exposition in 1893. Now, the kids are not going to plug into that memory, but they might remember that the architecture is part of a grander tradition that's bigger than Fort Wayne. And our courthouse is absolutely stupendous. It is the Hope Diamond of counties in Indiana.
As far as carving goes, it's a really grand piece of work. When I did the main gate for West Point, I had a contact who was a colonel in the Army who came out here to take a look at the carving in progress. And I wanted to show him something of the Midwest. He referred to Indiana as the pink state next to the green one, as if we were sort of in for dig out here. So I took him down to see the courthouse. And when he looked at it, his eyes just kind of widened, and he said, "There is no nicer structure in the country save only the Library of Congress." Then when I was out seeing him one time, he took me to the Library of Congress. He's right. The Library of Congress is nicer than our courthouse, but most structures in Washington, no matter how grand, are not as nice as our courthouse. It's a jewel, an absolute jewel.
I would want people to come into this building and understand their heritage, to understand what it must have been like 100 years ago, and what this community was, and how far we have come, and to recognize that this is a part of them.
As we enter the 21st century, the beauty and elegance of the Allen County Courthouse has yet to be surpassed. With its ongoing restoration, the courthouse will continue to remind Fort Wayne of its past and provide for its residents well into the future.